Today was a public engagement event, essentially. We do a whole range of different kinds of history at Huddersfield, and we wanted to showcase this to the general public, but we also wanted to involve other local community groups who we know are working on history of their own, or maybe who want to work on history of their own but aren't sure how to go about it. So give them a sense of the kinds of history they could do, and by involving institutions like the Heritage Lottery Fund, explaining to them how they might get funding to pursue historical projects of their own, and also involving some local other heritage institutions, museums and so on, and again giving them a chance to talk to each other and find out about what we do here.
Regardless of the community you're representing, the area you're from or whatever, if you need support from us, we're here to support you in that process. But we would like to see groups that haven't accessed our funding before come forward. Natural heritage is a focus. Young people are always a focus because they're our future custodians of heritage, and a wider, more diverse range of communities coming forward is also something we'd like to see.
People just feel more comfortable talking about mental health, and that in itself is really positive in breaking down stigma. So the museum is just part of that wider movement about talking about mental health, talking with different people and their families. And also by sort of illustrating how things were like in the past, that really makes people think about what things are like today and, how perhaps we should change.
Kirklees Museums and Galleries is the museum service run by Kirklees Council. So as you can see from our big pop-up banner behind you, it actually covers a range of areas. So we have museums in Dewsbury and Batley and Huddersfield, and we have a number of other sites, including historic houses such as Oakwell Hall and Red House, which is at Gomersall, and the art gallery in Huddersfield as well.
We started off with a lecture in Black history, and this is because we know that in the local community there have been some questions to some of my colleagues asking why we don't do a greater proportion of Black history here at Huddersfield, and it's something that we're certainly interested in offering more of. So we thought if we got a renowned expert on Black history in to give a talk on his research, again it might get people thinking about the range of history that we might be able to offer here. And we also had some other related talks. So Rob Light just presented on the Mixing It project, which is all about the range of ethnic diversity in Britain during World War II. And again, that included a proportion of Black history. So we heard about, for example, pilots, RAF pilots from the Caribbean, but we also heard about Polish children who came to England during the Second World War, fleeing from persecution of the Nazis and so on. And one of the things that came out very strongly in the discussion afterwards was that this is a discussion that you don't find out about in the standard histories of the Second World War. You just don't hear about that level of ethnic diversity. So again, I think that's given people a lot to think about, and a book of that project is going to be published soon, so people have the opportunity to read more about it.
My session was about a project that I worked on here at the university with one of the academics here, Professor Wendy Webster, on diversity in wartime Britain, which is basically about all the people from other parts of the world who came to Britain because of the war and the type of experiences that they had coming here and whilst they were here.
My colleague, Dr. Rebecca Gill, is doing a project on the First World War, and it's all about adult education during the First World War, and it's involving the Workers' Education Association, and she's working closely with them and also using documents that we have in the Heritage Key archive here at the university. So Professor Richard Morris talked to us about the Blackburn Trust that he's involved in Cheshire, and this is the house of the world famous author Alan Garner, and it's an amazing place because it covers the history of 10,000 years, and we had a talk where he told us about the evidence of all the different kinds of people who'd lived on the site, and also told us about the importance of the site to Alan himself, and his feeling that when he goes, he doesn't want the site to just turn into a house that a footballer buys because it's in a very affluent part of Cheshire. He wants it again to be a real living history centre, so not like a museum where you just go and you learn about the things that the museum wants to tell you, but a space where people can pursue their own history, their own historical projects as well.
Blackburn is a township in Cheshire. The Blackburn Trust is a heritage charity set up to care for two houses that have been lived in since the 1950s by the author Alan Garner, who wrote a book called The Owl Service that was published 49 years ago, just coming up to its 50th anniversary.
One of the things that Paul has been doing today is training people so that they can then conduct oral history interviews. So perhaps with older relatives, you want to make sure you capture their memories again while you still have them. And it's another way of helping people to create their own histories, really. And then they can put these interviews together, they can edit them, and then they can go into archives. You can put them in archives online, and they can eventually form part of a really important repository of community history information for historians like Paul and others of my colleagues.
So our workshop is part of our series of historical research skills sessions, and this one in particular is looking at oral history and some of the practical ways you can use oral history is editing and ways you can share it with the world. So it's a really good practical.
You need people to come to make it a success. So obviously we'd like to say a very big thank you to everyone who attended today, both the people who work professionally in the heritage industry and the people for whom this is maybe a hobby or perhaps something that they're hoping to turn into a profession, but they're the ones who really make the day. So we'd like to say thank you very much to everyone who came.